Kakadosh Boker Tov. We are Masechet Pesachim Daf Pe Amud Aleph 80A1. We are right here where it says Lo tuchal lizboach et Pesach be'achad sharecha, which means that from that pasuk we are going to learn that one person cannot make the influence and change the verdict on the Korban Pesach. It has to be a minimum of two. If you remember yesterday, we were speaking about whether it was half and half. Half people were Tmeim, half people were Teorim. And then we said that as long as you had one person more, it should be okay. Says the Gemara, that's not true. Because once it says, Lo tuchal lizboach b'achad sharecha, which means that you cannot take one of the sharim, one of the gates, and that's going to make the influence between whether it's going to be good or not good. So you need a minimum of two people or more in order to make it whether it's going to be tameh or tahor. Okay, that's what we finished yesterday. The Braita now continues, and this is where we are.
Doesn't give the reason.
No, it's from the pasuk. That's what they learn from the pasuk. From the pasuk, Lo tuchal lizboach b'achad sharecha, in one of your gates, meaning one of your gates cannot come and influence the Korban Pesach. It has to be more than one of your gates. It has to be a minimum of two people. Okay? Now we're on the second line. So the second line, Rabbi Shimon Omer. Yeah, says Rabbi Shimon. Yeah, so he comes and he says like this. Rabbi Shimon Omer, Afilu shevet echad tameh u'shakol shvintim teorim, halalu osin latzman, v'halalu osin latzman. Here he comes and he says another chidush. Before, we were only talking about the entire Klal Yisrael, majority of Klal Yisrael, or Kohanim, or Kli Sharet, the utensils, even if everyone else were pure. Okay, you guys remember that? Okay, you always have to do Chazara. You have to be on top, yeah? Now we're going to speak about one Shevet, which means we're not talking about the Kohanim, obviously, because if the Kohanim was a technical problem anyway, because they were the ones that do the service. But here we're talking about now one Shevet. So it says here, even if you have one Shevet, which is Tameh, and all the other Shevatim are going to be Torim, the Shevet, which is Tameh, is going to do it by themselves, and the Shevet, all the other Shvatim are going to do it to themselves, but they're both going to do it on the first, right, on the first month, okay, in the first Korban Pesach, not on the second one. My Tamad Rabbi Shimon, what's the reasoning why Rabbi Shimon says that? It's not the majority of the Kal. So if it's one Shevet is not the majority of the Kal, so if it's not the majority of the Kal, they should be pushed off to Pesach Sheni. So answers the Gemara, Kasav Shevet Echad Yikre Kal, but according to him, one Shevet is called the Kahal, it's called the Tzibur. So therefore, the fact that they are called the Tzibur, they do it on the first one as well, Betum'ah. But they have to do it separately from the other ones which they are Teorim. Makes sense, yeah? They don't do it on the second because no, first of all, the ones that are not Tameh, they obviously have to do it on the first, right? But even the ones which one? The whole Shevet. So what do we say? We said that if the Kahal are Tame'im, whether it's the majority of the Kahal or the entire Kahal, when do they do it? In the first one, Betumah. So therefore he said that since one entire Shevet is called the Kahal, so therefore it pushes off in the first one. Meaning on the first one, they're also able to do it, but they cannot bring it together with the people which are 100% pure. But rather, they have to bring it separate, but they do bring it on the first one. Why? Because they are Kahal. And if they are Kahal, what do we learn in our Mishnah? If the Kahal is to mean, that whether it's the entire Kahal or the majority of the Kahal, they bring it on the first one. Betumah. Okay? You with me or not? Yeah? Okay. So says the Gemara. Okay, Rabbi Yehuda Omer, Rabbi Yehuda comes and he says, Afilu shevet echad tameh u'shakol shvatim teorim, yasu betum'ah. Yeah, shen korban tzibur chaluk. So he comes and he says, even if one shevet itself is going to be tameh, yeah, and all the other shvatim are going to be tehorim, also they're going to do it in tumah. Why? Yeah, because he says shen korban tzibur chaluk, because you cannot divide the korban tzibur, which means that obviously Rabbi Yehuda, right, is not going to be exactly like the Shita of Rabbi Shimon, and we're going to explain why. So he says, Rabbi Yehuda Sava Shevet Echad Yikre Kahal, right? So according to Rabbi Yehuda, Shevet Echad is called a Kahal, yeah. So he comes and he says, Ve'havo lehu palga upalga, and therefore it comes out that even if one Shevet is going to be Tameh, it becomes Ki'ilu, it's half and half, which means the Shevet Tameh are going to bring it in Tumah, right? Because it has an important portion in the tzibur, right? In the tzibur, the en tzibur chaluk ve'avdi kulu betumah. So therefore, they're going to do it betumah. That means basically, according to Shitat Rabbi Yehuda, they could bring it together. Meaning like this: whether according to Rabbi Shimon or according to Rabbi Yehuda, they could come to the first one. That's according to everybody. Why? Because one shevet is called the kahal. And we said that if the kahal or tamim, they bring it on the first one. What's the machloka between them? According to Rabbi Shimon, since they are considered a kahal, so they bring it, but they cannot bring it together with the people that are pure. So you have to bring all the people that are pure separately, and all the shevet, which is tameh, separately. According to Rabbi Yehuda, he says no. Since the entire thing is a communal sacrifice, and it's not chaluk, it's not different, it's not separated, right? There's no dichotomy there. So what happens is that all of a sudden, they bring it together. So now the Teorim and the Tamim could bring it all together because they are kahal. They are an important part. Okay, so that is a machlok between Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Shimon. Each matter was stated, Hayu Yisrael mechza Teorim mechza Tamim. If they were half, now we forgot about now the entire shevet part. We're going back to the entire Klal Yisrael. So again, one more time, the entire Klal Yisrael. If you had Yisrael mechza Teorim mechza Tamim, half Teorim and half Tamim, Amar Rav says, Metamin echad mehen b'sheretz. What do? You purposely come and you impurify one of the people with a sheretz, in order that now you're going to have majority. That means you had half. That's what's happening. That's what's saying. So says the Gemara, Ve'amai why? Niavdu hanu lechudayu ve'anu lechudayu. Just do it separately. Meaning, for sure, if it's already half, we already said that you would still bring it according to one of the shitot, if you remember, there was machloket, whether half is considered over or not. But for sure, you would bring it, but you bring it separately. So now, why are you trying to do this? Bring it separately. What are you trying to do this? Say that it, and then you could all bring it together? Te'amar Rav says, because he already said that when it's mechza, each one do it on their own. So says the Gemara, no, what are we dealing with? There were more Tamein, more than Teorim, one person. So it comes out that Be'emet, the Teorim are a mute, and they're not fitting to do the Korban, the Tahara, right? So therefore, because of one person. So says the Gemara, Ihachi, so, Havalu Ruba Tamim. We already just said that the majority of Tamim. If you had one person more of Tamim, you already have the majority. So do everyone Betuma. So answers the Gemara, no. There was only one person extra. And we just learned at the beginning of today's daf that when you learn from the pasuk, Lo tuchal lizboach et Pasach ve'echad sharecha, right? You learn from there what? You learn from there, that's Rabbi Elazar Matya, that you need two. So because of that, you have to impurify one extra person. So now it's two people that are extra, that are Tmim more than Teorim. And now you have the majority. That's what we're talking about. Okay? So says the Gemara, Yachiv, so, so then go back to the original question. Why do you have to do such a big balagan, right? Just do some this way and some that way, which means just do it separately. What was the entire concept? Why was it so important to do it together? You understand? Just do it separately. These people are Teorim, these people are Tamim. Come on. So it says, but rather this is what it means to say. Is there anybody that actually holds like the Tanakama of the Braita, that if you have half and half, they don't do a betuma? And they hold like Rabbi Yehuda, that there's no difference in the Korban Tzibur, which means that everyone does it together, right? That means if there's somebody that actually agrees to these two deot, that they're going to hold that the Teorim are not able to do it with Tmeim, right? But nevertheless, they would still do it in a separate group. So in order that we do it, that everyone is able to do it, the korban betum'ah. So therefore, we're coming to say that we are trying to find it, right? That if it's going to be a problem of mechza of half and half, so the only way to get out of this problem is basically by impurifying one extra person, and now they're able to bring it. Because if not, you have to come on to two different shitot. One shita that if it's half and half, right? That because again, according to the beginning that we just said now, there are some people that say by palga or palga lo avdikul betuma, which means that they don't do it. Right? That means they would have to basically, push it off or whatever it is, because basically they don't have the majority. Plus, right, they would have to hold like Rabbi Yehuda that in Korban Tzibur Chaluk. So that means you would have to find somebody that holds like those two different opinions, and that's not that simple bringing these two different opinions, because there's a machloket by both. Okay, everyone understood or not? One more time. There are two different opinions. First of all, there was a machloket to do with half and half. Do you bring a betuma or not? There was a machloket. According to one opinion, half and half is considered a majority, and they bring it, but they have to bring it separately. And according to the second opinion, they don't bring it at all. Second machloket is the concept of Rabbi Yehuda that en korban tzibur chaluk, which means that according to him, since we say that the Korban Tzibur is never going to be differentiated between one another, so therefore, even if there's going to be Tmeim, they always bring it together. They never bring it separate. Meaning, if you're already bringing it on the first Korban Pesach, everyone brings it together. You don't bring it separate. Now, to hold like both of those opinions is difficult because basically each one is a machloket, and you're trying to find one opinion that holds like both together. So therefore, that's why he says, in order to get out of any of the problems, if you have one extra person that becomes impure because of the sheretz, now it's good according to everybody. Because now you have the majority of tzibur according to everybody. Because you have two people extra, not one. Okay? The Ula Amar. Ula now is going to say, instead of coming in and purifying one person, what you do is you take the pure person, one pure person, and you send him off. Right? You know, so that means basically it doesn't make sense, meaning that what are you trying to do? It's like accounting. You understand? What are you trying to do? It's either that you're trying to take an extra loss or you're trying to get rid of an extra gains, of an extra profit. So the first shita was saying, impurify him. Now you have two tmeim. The second shita says, where are you going to impurify anybody? Send one of the pure people to Honolulu. Send them off. And now you have the majority tmeim. Why do you have to impurify? So that's what the Gemara is going to ask. Just make him tameh b'sheretz, just like the first opinion. So says the Gemara, kasava shochtin v'zurkin on tameh sheretz. So Ula hold that we do shechita and we sprinkle the blood on tameh sheretz. So according to him, if somebody is going to be nitman the sheretz on the 14th of Nisan, he could do tevilah, have erev shemesh, and then he's fitting to eat korban pesach in the nighttime. So therefore, according to him, it's considered a korban pesach betara. So therefore, he would, right? He's not going to be machriya the tzibur tuma. Meaning, according to Shitat Ula, it doesn't help being mitameh b'sheretz. Why? If you're mitameh b'sheretz, according to Shitat Ula, what do? You bring, right? You do tevilah. You wait until the nighttime, and then you're able to eat the korban pesach normally. So according to him, this too much sheretz doesn't help to purify on a large scale in order to say now that they would bring a betuma, because he could eat the korban pesach without any problem. So if we're being mitameh b'sheretz, it doesn't help according to him. So says Gemara, fine. So if you're not going to be mitameh b'sheretz, what can you be mitameh, which for sure helps? Tamemet. Oh, right. But it's the same source. It's the sword which comes from tamemet. Well, basically with tamemet, not from tameh b'sheretz. It's tamemet. The tameno b'met. So answers the Gemara, madcheu ata mechagigato. Okay, you made him tamemet, and now you pushed them off for the korban pesach, but you also pushed them off from what? From the korban chagiga. So we don't want to push him off from the korban chagiga. If it was a sheretz, too much sheretz is not like the tumamet, so then he would still be able to bring his korban chagiga. Here, you're pushing him off from the korban chagiga as well. So says the Gemara, one second. Now also you're pushing him off. When you're going to send off the pure person, you're pushing him off from doing the korban pesach. If your entire concept is one more time, Ula says that it doesn't help to be mitameh b'sheretz. So what do? Send a pure person to Honolulu, and he's not going to do the korban, right? At all. Yeah, at least not this time. So the question is, one second, why didn't you just mitameh b'sheretz? So he says it doesn't help. According to Ula, it doesn't help mitameh b'sheretz, because you could still bring the korban pesach and you could eat it. So says the Gemara, right? He says, one second, but forget about the entire concept, right? If right now it's going to happen, right, that all of a sudden you're going to have a case where, right, that the problem is that the Tashmeshet doesn't help, be metamemet. So he says, no, metamemet, you have the korban chagiga that you're pushing him off. So he says, so what's the difference? Now you push him off from the korban pesach. You send him to Honolulu, the pure person. So what's better? To push off a pure person by making him tameh, but he can't bring the korban chagiga, or pushing him away and sending him to Honolulu, but now he can't even do the korban pesach. So answers the Gemara, kasavar ula, answers the Gemara, if shar davi b'sheni, he could do korban pesach sheni. And if he does korban pesach sheni, there's no problem. So says the Gemara, one second, b'met nami if shar davi b'shvi, davi l'shmini shelo. Says one second. Also, if you're going to be mitameh oto with tumat met, what's going to happen? You're going to be mitameh oto, and after being mitameh oto, you're right. He can't bring the korban chagiga on the first day, but what can he bring the korban chagiga on the last day? Remember, the korban chagiga you could bring, if you didn't bring it on the first day, you bring it every single day of the chag until the last day, which is the seventh day. Now, the seventh day is his eighth day, because since he became tamemet on Erev Pesach, so therefore the eighth day is the last day, which means he could still bring the korban chagiga. So what's the problem? Be mitameh oto tumat met, and then he's able to bring the korban chagiga on the eighth day, and now the entire Klal Yisrael are able to bring the korban chagiga, the korban Pesach on Pesach, right, B'tumah, because we had an extra person B'tameh.
Et on Pesach Sheni, does they have to bring a Hagiga also?
No, only on, remember, Korban Chagiga is only on Yom Tov, Shalosh Regalim.
The Hag. But I thought it was to, if there is not enough for the Korban Pesach for all
yes,
the
but
family.
that's not called the regular Korban Chagiga. That's called the Chagiga, Chagigat Arba Asar. That's called the Chagiga, which comes with the Korban Pesach. But remember, that Korban Chagiga, which comes with is not an obligation. Meaning it's only if you just don't have enough meat, so you make that. So you're going to eat it.
Okay.
But for example, if you didn't bring it, you didn't bring it. You don't need to bring it. With the proof, if it comes out on Shabbat or all the other cases over there, you didn't need to bring that Korban Chagiga. So here we're talking about the Korban Chagiga, the obligation of the Yom Tov.
Of the Chag, d'accord.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, very good. So says the Gemara, yeah. He comes and he says, fine. He says, Kasavar Ula says, Kulu tashlumin dirishon inhu, techazi birishon chazi bekulu. V'chol echad lo chazi birishon lo chazi bekulu. Comes Ula and he gives a big chidush. Again, remember what was the concept? The concept is you had 51 over 49, right? Remember, we're not talking about percentages because it's not percentages; it's people. And so if I say 51 over 49, it's not really 51. It's probably a 500,000, 600, whatever it is. But you have one extra person.
You said that it's groups, right? Bring
yes.
Groups of people. Why
yes.
You cannot join another group?
Nothing to do with the entire group. You're talking about the entire Klal Yisrael. You had 51. Again, we're not talking about percentage. I know. Let's say you had 501,000. So 500,001, right? Yeah, it's very difficult. Yeah, it's a very, I thought about it at the beginning. You know what it is to find the entire Klal Yisrael and to have 50 and 50? We're not about 50% and 50%. Nowadays, right, if you remember to do with the Lavdila Lefavdalo, the elections, you could have like 50.1% and 49.1%, but the difference is like 20,000 people. You understand? We're not talking, especially when we're talking about like, big numbers, the bigger states, it could be like 20,000, 30,000 people, 60,000 people, you understand? And the percentage point is hardly anything. You understand? It's like crazy. You understand? But here, what we're talking about though is that something completely different. Here we're talking about one person, right? We're not talking about a few hundred people. We're talking about one person. That's it. Is that one person? So here, what are we talking about? Again, one more time. We said one person was extra. It doesn't help because you always need two people. So the first opinion the Gemara said, be mitameh another person to macheretz, and Gamarnu says Ula, it doesn't help. Why? Because according to me, to macheretz doesn't help. So what do you have to do? Send off one of the pure people to Honolulu. We asked, be mitameh tmemet. Says no, you're pushing him off the Korban Chagiga. Ask the Gemara, 1 second, the Korban Chagiga you could bring on the 8th day on his 8th day, which is the 7th day of Pesach, but you could still bring it for the 7th day. And so the Gemara, according to Shitat Ula, the concept of tashlumin. What is tashlumin? Makeup, right? You're making it up. It's like makeup exams or makeup of a tefillah, tashlumin. What is that concept? Only if the first day you were fitting to do it and you didn't do it, so you're able to make it up one of those 7, the other 7 days afterwards.
You can't choose.
You're not allowed to choose it, but the avad, I'm saying if you didn't bring it on the first day, you have tashlumin.
Yeah, but only on the case of tomorrow.
No. Even if you didn't. A person stam didn't bring the Korban Chagiga on the first day, he could bring it the 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th day. No. Korban Pesach, no. Korban Pesach, we're not talking about it. Korban Pesach, if you didn't bring it on Pesach Rishon, you have to bring it on Pesach Sheni. No, doesn't exist any other thing.
Understand the Pesach Rishon. You need to have a real reason not to bring it.
For sure. Chas v'shalom. If not, it's karet. For sure. Which one? Yeah, tameh.
No, I mean, this guy, for example, if you send it to Honolulu.
You're right. Which that in itself we have to understand, right? Because 1 second, if you're just going to say that you're sending him to Honolulu, now he's going to be chayav karet. If a person doesn't do the Korban Chagiga, so fine, he didn't do a mitzvah, right? He didn't do a mitzvah Korban Chagiga. Here you send him away. He didn't do a Korban Pesach, unless you're going to say that they did it on his behalf, meaning that he was part of a group and they did it on his behalf, even though he didn't eat it. But I don't know if he's right. But for sure you could have a share. The question is. Exactly, because I think in order for him to be Yotzei Chovah, I think he has to eat the kazait. Maybe it's enough the blood. Maybe right. Even without the food eating it, it could be. It could be. Even though the Gemara does not speak about it until now. So let's see. Let's see if the Gemara is going to speak about it. But you understood the question though. So what happened? So now Ula answers very simple. He says, according to him, you're pushing him off completely of the Korban Chagiga. Why are you completely pushing him off of the Korban Chagiga? Because Korban Chagiga could only be brought the other days only if the first day you were fitting. But if the first day you were not fitting to bring the Korban Chagiga, so then it's not Tashlumim. Meaning, again, what is the concept of Tashlumin? Tashlumin is payback. Tashlumin is payback, which means that the first one you had to do, you didn't do it, so you pay it back. However, though here, there's no payback. Because the first day, you weren't fitting to do it. So for there's no such thing as payback. So you completely push him off from the Korban Chagiga. Okay? So says the Gemara, Amar lehu Rav Nachman, says of Nachman, Zilu ve'amri le'leula, man tzait akar sikeu mashkene v'ra'eit. Who's going to help him to come and to start taking out the pegs and to start running, right, to a place so far away? Which means, who's going to be in the right mind going to run away? You know, you have to try to like find the volunteer to go to Honolulu. Who's going to want to do that? Okay, so fine. But again, technically that's a very technical question, because at the end of the day, I'm saying it's here he wants to say that nobody will listen and try to go. So therefore, it's just better to impurify one of the teorim. But I could ask the other way around as well. Who's going to want to become tameh? Who's going to want to become tameh?
Especially tameh.
No, we're not talking about tameh. Tameh sheretz.
If we say tameh sheretz, it's not going to help.
That's only according to Ula, but according to the regular case. The regular case was tameh sheretz. So the truth is, you're going to say big deal. I'm saying, okay, he becomes tameh for one day. It's not like you understand. It's not like the worst.
It's gonna be the Rav who do it, like who's gonna do it, has the aliyah of the klalot.
I see how much people love the rabbi always. They always want to just give it to him on the head. Don't worry, Joe. You're being recorded. It's okay. Yeah, I'm telling you, it's incredible how always the rabbi is the most loved. You know how you have to put it in.
I understand.
Most loved out of the entire keilah. Always. You see it, no matter what. I'm fine. So says the Gemara, Itmar, it was stated, Hayuru ban zavin. What happens if the majority of the tzibur were zavs? Right? Remember, zavs means seminal discharges, right? That when it comes out when the membrane is dead. Okay, when the organ is dead, the male organ. Umiutan tmemet, and the minority of the people. Which one? Yeah, and the minority of the people were tmemitim. So now, tmemet is the stringent one. The zav was a lower level one. Okay? So now it says over here, right? Now here it says that tumat tzibur was only by tumat met or tumat sheretz, but not by tumat zav. So it says here, so you have minority tumat met and majority zavs. So Amar Rav, again, what's the, we're talking about the majority of Klal Yisrael have to be zavs. What's the, you understand? So Amar Rav says, Otan tmei metim enam osim lo pesach shalom b'shni. Those tmei metim, they cannot do no pesach rishon, no pesach sheni. Why? Rishon lo avdi, the first one they can't do it because they're the minority, and the minority cannot do the first one. V'sheni nami lo avdi, and they can't do the second one because kol echad avdi tzibur b'rishon, avid yachid b'sheni. Because if the entire tzibur do the first one, so then the yachid could do the second one. But kol echad lo avdi tzibur b'rishon, but if the first one did not do it in the first one, for example, in this case, they couldn't have done it. So lo avid yachid b'sheni, so the individual cannot do it in the second one. Which means that it's going to come out that these people that Tamei Mitim cannot do it at all. They can't do it at all. They lost out completely because of the scenario of how it worked out. So what happened? Right? Okay. So Amar lehu Shmuel comes and he tells the yeshiva, Zilu amru le'aba, go tell an Rav. Right? It says, V'yasu b'nei Yisrael tepasach b'mo'adom. What are you going to do that? At the end of the day, what? Nobody's going to do it? Here, at the end of the day, whether it's Tamei Met or everything else, right? The majority of the Kal cannot do it. So the majority of the Kal cannot do it. How are they going to fulfill the pasuk that says that they have to do the Korban Pesach in the proper time? Okay? So it says over here, so Amar lehu, so he comes and he tells them, Zilu amrele, go tell Shmuel. So he's going back and forth. So he went and go tell Shmuel, Ki avu kulu zavim mayavetele. What about if everybody's zavim? What are you going to do? Ela kemen de lo efshar, but since you can't bring the Korban Pesach, lo efshar, you can't bring it. Hachanam and lo efshar, so to here, you can't bring it. Which means in this case, they just don't bring the Korban Pesach. Why? That's just the way that it works. What can you do? You understand? There's nothing what to do. What can you do? Itmar was stated, Hayuru ban tmei mitim. The majority of them were tmei mitim. Umiutan zavin, the minority were zavin. Ravuna says, En tashlumin lepesach ba betuma. There's no tashlumin for Pesach, which comes with tuma. And Ravada Barava says, Yesh tashlumin pesach ba betuma. There is tashlumin for Pesach, which comes with tuma. Which means that the minority, could do Pesach sheni if they became pure until then. So it comes out that there's a machloket, right? There's a machloket between Tanakama and Rav Huna, no? Yeah, because the Tanakama said majority are Tamei Mitim and the Miutan Zavim, right? So then what happens? Sorry, there's a machlok between Rav Huna and Ravada Barava. So Rav Huna said, "En tashlumin pesach sheni," right? Why? Because since everyone does it on the first one, so then the minority cannot do it on the second one because everyone does it on the first one because you have the majority. Yeah. So says the Gemara, Ravada Barava says, "Yesh tashlumin lePesach ba betuma." There is tashlumin for Pesach which comes betuma. Okay. So says the Gemara, "Name about kami pageh." Why don't we just say that this is a machlok between them? Teman de Amar, that according to the Man de Amar that says, "En tashlumin lePesach ba betuma," kasavar tuma dechuya betzibur. Uman de Amar yesh tashlumin lePesach ba betuma, kasavar tuma hutra betzibur. Why don't we go back to the original thought? You remember this concept of hutra and dechuya, overridden to override, like it's like like it's like you got a waiver, or is it that it's permitted completely? So basically, we wanted to say like this: if you're going to come and you're going to tell me that there's no tashlumin for Pesach Haba Tuma, he just holds that the Tuma was dechuya betzibur, and therefore, if you're going to tell me dechuya betzibur, the Torah permits the Yisure Tuma bekoshi just because of the tzibur. So therefore, what's going to happen is that if they are going to be Tmeim and they're going to be pushed off to Pesach Sheni, only the Korban which is coming on Pesach Rishon through the Teorim, because the Dechiyat to Pesach Sheni, it's written Ish ki etameh. So when it says the word Ish, it's only a Yachid, which is one person, right, of the Tzibur. Okay? But one person of the Tzibur are not fitting, but the Shara Tzibur, the rest of the Tzibur, they had to do it in the proper way. Now, if you're going to tell me Tuma Hutra Betzibur, it means it was completely permitted. So according to this, when the majority are going to be Tmeim, so then they're considered Tehorim. So therefore, they could actually push off the Zavim to the Pesach Sheni. Because basically, all the people that are Tmeim, they become Tehorim. So now they push off the Zavs to Pesach Sheni. But since they are Tehorim, so now they push off the Zavim to the Pesach Sheni. So says the Gemara, Amri lo, no. According to everybody, we hold Tuma Dechuya B'tzibur. And this is the machlok between them. Mor Savar, one of them holds Tahara Midchaya, Tuma Lo Midchaya, Umor Savar Afilu Tuma Nami Midchaya, which means that the first Mandamar holds that the Tahara is pushed off the people that are not fitting to do it on Pesach Sheni, right? But Tum'a Lo Midchaya, but it's not going to push off the Reuyim to the Pesach Sheni. And according to Ravada Bar Ava, even the doing the Pesach Betuma, it's also going to push off. So it's also going to push it off to the people that are not able to push it off to the Pesach Sheni, which means like this. If you're going to tell me now, Tuma dechuya betzibur, right? It doesn't mean that everyone's tahor. It just means it's overridden, which means we do an override. Override means that all of a sudden, even though they're tameh, they're allowed to bring it. Are you going to tell me that they're pure? They're not pure, but they're allowed to bring it betuma. That's called dechuya betzibur. Now, according to this, it comes out that Rav Huna, which he was the first one, that according to Rav Huna, he says there's no tashlumin for Pesach Sheni, right, for Pesach Haba Betuma. So therefore, he wants to say Tahara Midchaya, which means it pushes off the people that are not fitting to Pesach Sheni, but the concept of Tum'ah itself does not push it off, which means the people that were not able to do it, they cannot do it now on Pesach Sheni. But according to Ravada Bar Ava, even the Tum'ah, it pushes it off. That means they could be able to do it on Pesach Sheni. They would be able to do it on Pesach Sheni. Okay? So each one was stated, Hayush Lishitan. What happens if you have a third of the Tzibur Zavim? A third of the Tzibur Teorim, and a third of the Tzibur Tmemet. So you have a third, or a third. So Amar of Mani Bar Patish, says Mani Bar Patish, Otan Tmemetim, the people that are Tmemetim, they can't do it on the first one or the second one. Why? The first one, they can't do it because, again, they are not the majority. Higdilu zavim la teorim, because you have the zavim on the teorim, telo avdi betuma, that they cannot do it betuma, which means that even if you're going to say that you would do the korban pesach betuma, the zavim are not going to be mishtatfim. So therefore, you cannot count the zavim with the tmeim in order to become majority. Remember, the zavim do not count with the tmeim. So therefore, there's not majority tmeim. You have the majority teorim. You have a third taor, a third zavs, right, zavim, and you have a third tmemitim. So the zavim, they go towards the Israel, towards the teorim. So now you have the majority taor. Okay? Now you have the majority, the minority, which are tememet. Umiuta, the minority, they can't do it in the first one. Now they can't do it in the second one either. Why can't they do it in the second one? Because now you're going to do the opposite. Now you're going to combine the zavim with the tememetim that they didn't do it the first time around. And then what happens? And now all of a sudden they become the majority of the tzibur. And the majority of the tzibur can never be pushed off to Pesach Sheni. So it's a catch-22. Everyone understood what happened? You have a third pure, a third zavim, and a third tmei metim. Now the zavim cannot bring it on the korban pesach rishon, but zavim are not considered tmeim to consider the majority of the tzibur tmeim. So therefore, to do with the first korban pesach, I'm going to consider them pure. They cannot bring the korban pesach, but I'm going to consider them pure, because they're not tmei metim, because it's only tmei met and sheretz that make the majority of the tzibur impure, right? With regards to korban pesach. So what happens on the pesach rishon? I'm going to do a tally, and I say, okay, a third pure and a third zavin. I put them together, so it's 2/3. So they're the majority. So tmei metim, push them to the second one. Okay, but now what happens? The zavim cannot actually bring the first one because they're still tmeim. They don't get, so they get pushed off to the second one as well. But they're not considered the majority of the tzibur. So what happens? They get pushed off to the second one, and the tmemets get pushed off to the second one. So the tmemetim are pushed off to the second one because they're the minority. The zavim get pushed off to the second one because they're not able to do the first one, but they are not considered tmeim to do with respect of that. So now comes Pesach Sheni, and now all of a sudden, who wants to do the korban pesach? The tmemetim and the zavim. They can't now anymore because now they became the majority, because now they're 2/3 of Klal Yisrael. 2/3. No, but he was a zav the same day. That was only according to Ula. That Ula said that the same day he just does tevilah. He waits till the nighttime and then he can eat the korban pesach. According to the other shitot, we don't do that. Yeah. Okay, so we finished the Mishnah. So Kal Kadosh, we're on Daf Pei Amud Bet again. 80b. We're starting the next. This is now the Mishnah. The Mishnah says a Pesach shenizrak tamo ve'achar kach noda shu tameh. Imagine right now they went and they brought the Pesach or the blood, right? And the blood, what happened is that the Pesach or the blood was tameh during the time of Zrika, which means they take the Korban Pesach, they did the slaughtering, and then they sprinkle the blood. And then they found out that either the Korban or the blood were tamein when they went and they sprinkled it. So a tzitz minatzeh. So the tzitz, remember the tzitz is the frontal of the head plate, right, which has Kodesh Lashem of the Kohen Gadol, right? It's only the Kohen Gadol that has it. That is miratzeh. If you remember in the tefillah of Musaf of Kippur, we say that the clothing of the Kohen Gadol, each one is mechaper for certain things. Each one is an atonement for certain things, and we actually add it in because if you actually pay attention, it's not actually in the actual sidur. I added it in from another version, right? That we actually have that we added it in. So I added in. That's why I in my avotenu, I added in a few different things here and there. And one of the things that I added in that you actually say it exactly. So you say that this is what each one of the kapara is, the atonements of. So the tzitz miratzeh, it's going to make it that basically they're not obligated to bring a korban pesach sheni, right? It's going to be okay. Now, however, though, right, im nodalach azika shenitma guf, which means that the person, right, the bala korban, meaning that not the animal, not the korban became disqualified, the human being became disqualified, and a tzitz minatzeh. So now it doesn't help, which means that he's obligated to bring korban pesach sheni. Okay, so you understood. If it's the sacrifice that became disqualified, the tzitz is miratzeh, the tzitz atones. But if it's a human being that became disqualified, and again, disqualified with a tamemet, yeah, so then it doesn't count. And you have to bring a korban pesach sheni. Because they said, Chachamim say, Nazir ve'oseh pesach, if a person's a Nazir and he did the pesach, hatzitz minatzeh tumat dam, the tzitz is going to be minatzeh on the tumah of the dam, and hatzitz minatzeh tumat guf, but it's not going to be. That means by the Nazir, we already learned that it's going to be minatzeh on tumat dam, but not tumat guf, meaning only on the sacrifice, but on the human being. Nitzma tumat tehom, if a person became tameh, but with tumat tehom, here it says it's a tumah that you never knew about it before. For example, what happens if they found a dead person, right, that he was buried underneath like a pile of rocks or things like that? So that means nobody knew that he was there. So that's called tumata tehom, because it's like tehom. Tehom is like the abyss, you don't know anything about it. So if a person became tameh with tumata tehom, the tzitz is minatzeh on the korban, and he is going to be yitzeh chovah. The Gemara obviously is going to explain why. Okay, fine. Says the Gemara. Okay. Ta'ama, the reason why the tzitz is miratzeh is because nizrak ve'achar kach noda, because they sprinkled the blood, they threw the blood, and after throwing the blood, then they found out that the korban became tameh. But the opposite way around. What happens if they knew that it became tameh and only afterwards did they sprinkle the blood? So lo miratzeh. Obviously, it's not going to atone. Correct? It's only logic. It's only if it happened before, but not afterwards. Says the Gemara, mean we have a contradiction. Al ma tzitz minatzeh. What does the tzitz come and atone for? Al adam v'al basar v'al chelev shenitma. On the blood, meat, the flesh, or the prohibited fats of a korban that became tameh. Ben b'shogeg ben mizid ben be'ones ben b'ratzon. Whether it was shogeg, accidentally, purposely, ben be'ones, force majeure, or b'ratzon, willingly. Ben b'yachid ben tzibur. Whether it's a korban yachid or korban tzibur. So you see mefurash in the Braita that even if it's going to be b'mizid, meaning purposely, it's still going to be minatzeh. So that means if you knew about it, it's still going to be minatzeh. So why are you deducing from our Mishnah that if it was known already, right? I mean, the fact was known, and then you sprinkle the blood that it's not going to be good. Here we see mefurash that it is good, even if you knew it about it. So the answer is the Gemara. Ravina says, tumato, the tum'ah of the korban, ben meshogeg ben mezid hurtza. Then you're right. Whether it was shogeg or mezid, it's going to be okay. But to do the zrika, which is the sprinkling of the blood, only b'shogeg it's going to be okay. But b'mezid, no. That means here there's a big difference between the actual korban and the sprinkling of the blood. The korban, you're correct. The korban, whether it was shogeg or mezid, it's going to be okay. The tzitz is going to be minatzeh. But the sprinkling of the blood, it's only if it's going to be b'shogeg. If it was going to be b'mezid, it's not minatzeh. Rabbi Shila comes and he argues and he says, Zrikato b'meshogeg b'mezid urtza. No, the opposite. The sprinkling of the blood doesn't matter. The storing of the blood doesn't matter. Whether shogeg or mezid, it's going to be okay. Tumato b'shogeg hurtza b'mezid urtza. To do with the tumato, there it became tameh of the korban itself, not the throwing of the blood. I keep on saying the sprinkling of the blood. It's not the sprinkling of the blood. It's throwing of the blood, but it's okay. Okay, just remember that it's throwing. Okay. Ela hadiktani, but that which we learned, ben b'shogeg ben mezid, that which is going to be shogeg mezid. But this is what it means to say. Nitma b'shogeg uzrako. What happens if it became tameh b'shogeg and you sprinkle the blood ben b'shogeg ben mezid? Hurtza, it's going to be okay. Hadiktani, that which we learned in the Mishnah, that the dam shenizrak, and then afterwards you found out about it. Tama, the reasoning why was because nizrak, and afterwards you found out about it. But if you found out about it and afterwards you threw the blood, it's not going to be okay. So huadin, even if you would find out about it and afterwards it was going to be sprinkled, the hadiktani, that which we learned nizrak that it's sprinkled and afterwards you found out about it because you need to know the seifa. Nitzma haguf, if the guf became tameh, en atzitz minatzeh. The tzitz is not going to be minatzeh. Tafilu nizrak, but even if it was going to be nizrak, which means they threw the blood and afterwards they found out about it, lo, it's not going to be minatzeh. Tani reishanami, but we also learned nizrak that if it was going to be nizrak and afterwards they found out about it, right, it's going to be the same thing, same halacha. Okay, fine. 2 dots. Okay, so basically there was a machloke between Rabbi Shila and Ravina. Everyone understood until here?
Yeah,
One more time. I'm going to pause. So we're by the 2 dots, where the 2 dots said, if the Bala Korban found out that he was tameh with tumata tehom. Remember, tumata tehom means that he was tameh in such a fashion that nobody knew about it. It's in the tehom. It's like the abyss. It's covered. We don't even know about it. All of a sudden, there was a dead guy underneath a pile of bricks, a pile of rubble or whatever it is, and nobody knew about it. So it says the Gemara. Rabbi Merchava comes and he asks the following question: HaKohen amnatzeh bekobenotehen hutru lo tumata tehom or lo? The Kohen, which he is actually doing the Korbanot Pesach or the Nezirut, does he have this heter, right? Which means that if he all of a sudden found out after the Avodah that he became Tameh Beguf, his body, with a Safek Tumah, is the Korban kosher or not? Right? We're not talking about the Balabait, meaning the person that brought the Korban. We're talking about the Kohen that brought the Korban. Meaning the Kohen is doing the service of the Bet HaMikdash, and all of a sudden he found out that he's got a Safek Tumah. Was he Tameh or not? Do we say when do we learn Moshe to be lenient by tumata tehom? That's only by the owners, but by the kohen, right? Lo gemire, we don't have this halachal Moshe Sinai to be lenient. Or dilmar maybe bezivcha gemire. It was the halachal Moshe Sinai was to do with all the 2 concepts of korbanot, whether it's korbanot of Pesach or Nezirut, and there's no difference between the kohen and the baalim. Which means one more time. To do with Tumata Tehom, there was a Halachal Moshe Sinai. The Halachal Moshe Sinai by the Tumata Tehom was, it says here, it's called the Tumat Safek. Okay, it's a Tumat Safek, which means it's a doubt. So here it says, the Gemara in Pei Aleph Amud Bet. So we're going to learn it tomorrow. The Gemara in Pei Aleph Amud Bet says, the Halachal Moshe Sinai, to do with Korbanot Nazir and Pesach, that Tumata Tehom, is lighter than a regular Tumah. It's a lower level. Obviously, it's a doubt. by Korban Pesach and by Korban Nazir. No, of Tehom. No, Tehom has to be met. Tehom is met, but it was a doubt because it was not known. Meaning maybe by meant there was a dead person underneath these rubbles. You don't know. It's Tumat Tehom. So we're more lenient than a regular Tumah. So now what the Gemara now is asking is, our Mishnah just said that by Tumat Tehom, the tzitz is miratzeh, and therefore the owner gets an atonement. The question is it only the owner or also the Kohen? The Kohen became a Safek Tumah by Tumat Tehom. When we say that the tzitz is miratzeh, is it only the balabait, meaning the one for himself, or is it even the Kohen bringing it? So the Safek is, do we say that it's on the Korbanot, which the Korbanot, there's no difference between a Kohen or not? Or do we say, no, it's only to do with the Korban, to do with the owner, the one that's bringing it? So that's the question of the Gemara. Okay? And again, remember, because it's Halakha Moshe Misinai that we're more lenient. Because how are you going to know about it? It's a Safek, everything's a doubt. You understand? You don't know, right? All of a sudden there was rebels, right? Like what happens, Bar Minan, whatever it is, in Mexico and all these things, it was the how do you call it, the earthquake and everything, and all of a sudden buildings just collapse, and people don't even know if people are buried alive under there or not. How do you know? And imagine it stays like that for weeks and weeks and weeks or whatever it is. You understand? It happens. You understand? By the time they come and they start cleaning up the place and fixing everything, and Twin Towers, how long did it take until they actually clean everything up, take everything out, do everything, and then they come in, and there were a lot of people that they were burnt alive, so you don't even know the bodies anymore. You understand? So bichlal, we're talking about complete, okay. So says the Gemara, if they are completely burnt, yes, but if there's still bones, then yes, yeah, of course, a bone is mitameh, kaseora, right? So that means the bones are still mitamim, okay. So says the Gemara, Amar Rava says, Tashema, we're going to try to bring a proof. Titani Rebechia, but Rebechia taught from the Braita, Lo Amru Tumata Tehom, Ela Lemet Bilvad. The concept of the Tameh, of Tumata Tehom, was only by a Tumat Met. Okay, but not by any other type of a Tumah. Okay, Lemet, Lemiut Tameh. What is it going to exclude? Lav Lemiut Tumat Tehom Asheretz. Are we not talking, trying to talk about Tumat Tehom of Asheretz, which means this? Imagine right now you come and you stick your hand inside of the earth, right? And only afterwards did you find out that you touched a sheretz, right? A creepy crawler, which was buried there, right? That nobody knew about it, right? So to do with that, we're not going to be mekel, because there at the end of the day, you touch the sheretz. And at the end of the day, there's no tumat atom. There's no, but even here also there was no safek. The thing is, it was tumat atom means that you didn't know about it at the time. Meaning nobody knew it was there. You came and you put your hand inside of rubble, and there was a dead person there. Now nobody knew about that. So because of that, even though you touched it, it was tumata tehom. Tumata tehom means that at the end of the day, nobody knew about it. So because nobody knew about it, I'm going to say Halakha Moshe Misinai that it's a lighter form of a tumah. It's not the same tumah like usual of tamemet. But says the Gemara, this concept of Halakha Moshe Misinai is only by tumat met, that we say tumata tehom. Okay, but not by any other type of, for example, tumat sheretz. We don't say that. Mayeskina, what are we dealing with? If you're going to tell me it's the owners, right, that the owners came and they went and they touched a sheretz, uveman, and which korban are we talking about? It has to be menazir, right? Ibn Nazir, does it help too much sheretz to stop and bring the korban nazir? It says, kiamut metala b'feta pitom amarachmana. It's only by tumat met that he could not bring it, which means that he could still come and bring it, not by too much. Tumat sheretz does not impede a nazir, right? It's only tumat met that impedes a nazir. Ella, they'll say Pesach. Obviously, we're talking about a korban Pesach. Right, so Hani Chalamandamar, this is good according to the Mandamar that says En Shochtim Vizorkim. So this is going to be a machloket in 10 dapim. In Daf Tzadi, Amud Bet, we're going to learn that there's a Mandamar that says that we do not slaughter the Korban Pesach, we don't throw the blood on Tameh Sheretz. That means even though the person became Tameh Sheretz out of Pesach, he could do Tevilah and eat immediately the Korban Pesach. So according to this Braita, it comes out that the Shchita and the Zrika for somebody that becomes Tumat Te'om of a Sheretz is Psula. It doesn't work. But according to the Mandamar Shochtim Vizorkim, you are allowed to do it on Tameh Sheretz, which means that you're allowed to do the Shchita, you're allowed to do everything, Korban and everything normal. So Hashta Tuma Yudua Hutralo Tumata Teom Lo Kol Sheken. I make a Kol Sheken. What's the Kol Sheken? If right now you know that he was Tameh, Tumat Sheretz, can you still bring the Korban? According to this Shita, yes. Because again, there's a machloket there. One Shita says no, one Shita says yes. But according to the Shita that says yes, you can bring it. So he says, 1 second, and now that it's a doubt, shouldn't be kol sheken that you could bring the korban pesach? Kal v'chomer. So says the Gemara, elalav the kohen. Obviously, we're not talking about the owner. We're talking about the kohen. Ushmamina. So we're learning from here, hutralo tumat tehom, that we have a heter of tumat tehom, right? And therefore there's no problem. So therefore it comes out that really bemet there's tumat tehom also by Kohen. The Kohen has a heter of tumat Kohen. So Rav Yosef says, no, leolam bebalim. Really, we are talking about the owners. And what are we talking about? The korban pesach. Ulemiut tumat tehom the ziva. We're not talking about the tumat tehom of the sheretz. Tumat tehom of the ziva, which means, how do you have tumat tehom of the ziva? Okay, we know that the ziva is like, it's like a semen, which it's like a seminal discharge. We always call it a seminal discharge, but it's not really seminal because it's a different type of a semen. It's a sickness, you understand? It's compared to semen. Now it says over here, so the first time that a zav sees, he becomes like a balkeri. So therefore he does tevilah, and immediately at nighttime he's pure. If he sees twice, so then he has to count. Then he's a zav, and then he needs a shivat nekim, and then he goes to do to the mikveh. Okay, fine. So somebody that's tameh tumat ziva on the 14th of Nisan, according to everybody, he cannot bring the korban pesach because since his tum'ah continues for 7 days, right, and he cannot become pure until the nighttime. Okay. However, though, when the 7th day of the Nekiim falls on the 14th of Nisan, so then it's like a safek, because maybe if he's going to bring it, because remember, they used to bring the Korban Pesach in the afternoon, right? By Chatzot and onwards, right? And then in the nighttime they used to eat it. But until then, maybe he's still going to see now in the afternoon, because it's still his last day of the Shiva Nekiim. And then he's going to, so therefore it's an entire thing of a safek. So therefore, even though there's a safek here, there's an efshirut to say, there's a possibility to say that you're allowed to bring the Korban Pesach. Because even if he's going to see again after they're bringing the Korban Pesach, right? That was called Tumat Tehom, right? Because during the time of Shechita, there's nothing to know that there's no Tumah by him. So that's considered like Tumat Tehom. That's what he's saying. So we're talking about a Kohen. He became, the Baalim, the owners. They became Tumat Zav. What happened was that his 7th day comes out Erev Pesach. Now, since it's Erev Pesach, he goes to the mikveh, but he still has to wait until the end of the day to make sure whether he's going to be pure or not pure. Okay, by the way, the same halacha applies to a zava. A woman that sees 3 days consecutively, right, blood, she goes to the mikveh after Shivat Nekim. The Shivat Nekim, technically, she went to the mikveh in the morning, but she wasn't able to be with her husband until the nighttime, because if she would still see during that day, it would destroy the entire day. Okay, so that's why she have to wait until the nighttime, because technically that entire day, that means technically they would do mikveh in the morning, not in the nighttime. It would be in the morning. Okay, so now it says over here though, what happened? We're talking about the owners.
If it's a day after,
So then she starts again a new day, a new cycle, and it's 1 day of seeing.
No. If she didn't go to the mikveh on this morning, she go to the mikveh to the other morning.
Ah, okay, that's still fine.
She doesn't need to wait tonight.
No. Okay, fine. So says the Gemara, V'tumat Amar of Yosef. Lo, we're talking about the Baalim, and we're talking about Korban Pesach, and we're talking about Tumat Tehom de Ziva. The Tumat Tehom de Ziva is lo meratzeh. He says what, the seeds is not going to be meratzeh on the Tumat Tehom of Ziva. But Tanya, we learned in a bright that Yosef Omer Yosef says, Shomeret Yom Keneged Yom. Imagine you have a woman that she's tovelet on the same day. She's Shomeret Yom Keneged Yom. Remember, 1 day of seeing blood does not make you obligate you in Shivat Nekim. It's Shomeret Yom Keneged Yom. You have to watch 1 day for 1 day. 1 day for 1 day, 2 days, again, you have to do 1 day, but when it's 3 days in a row, that's when you need the 7 clean days. So it says, Shomeret Yom Keneged Yom, Sheshachatu v'zarku alea, that they slaughtered it, and then they went and they sprinkled the blood, right? Besheni Shela, on the 2nd day, which is the day which is clean, Shomeret, right? Keneged Yom Shaburat Adam. And then afterwards, Pe'alef Amud Aleph, we're just finishing this little tiny piece where it says, Ve'achar kach ra'ata, and afterwards she saw blood the same day, and Ochelet, she can't eat the Korban Pesach. However, though she's ptura from doing the Pesach Sheni, why? Ma'itama, what's the reasoning? La mishum de meratzeh atzitz. Isn't it because it was meratzeh atzitz? So you see from here that the tzitz is meratzeh on Shomeret Yom Keneged Yom, which means Tumat Ziva. So therefore, how can you come and you tell me that here we're talking about the Tumat Tehom of Ziva? The tzitz is meratzeh on Tumat Ziva. So you can't tell me that that's what we're talking about. Okay? So fine. So Be'ezrat Hashem, we continue tomorrow.